I always say to my team, 80% clarity today is more valuable than 100% certainty in a month. So
That's a,
whenever,
that,
and when they give me analysis, sometimes I just want to see 80% of the analysis, and with that, I can run with that. And I show them how you can still take decisions with that. Over time, I notice my team becomes more agile because they know that if they are, say, 60%, 70% done with the exercise, they come and show me. And sometimes even with 70%, I go and say, okay, perfect. This gives me the information I need. I run with this. And yeah, it's a huge component of the simplification. But as I said before, for the ultimate form of simplicity is elimination. Because if you have a complex process that you have today, if you add AI, an enabler, or any other tools in that process, you know what you end up having is an automated complex output. So I love AI. It's more than a buzzword. I use it on my personal day. I'm sure you do.
Welcome, everyone. You're listening to the L.O.F.T Podcast, where leadership meets operations, finance, and transformation. I'm your host, Ranil De Silva. Lead with clarity, operate with purpose, transform with insight. Let's jump into the episode. As Leonardo da Vinci said once, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. In today's episode of the L.O.F.T, Leadership Driving Simplicity and AI, I'm joined by Carla Aranda, CFO and Senior Vice President of Finance at L'Oreal, a transformative finance leader known for championing the discipline of subtraction to drive organizational excellence. With more than 25 years of global experience, Carla has built a reputation as a chief simplifier, helping organizations strip away legacy complexity, modernize operations, and refocus on what matters most for performance and sustainable growth. She believes the real power of digital transformation is not just automation for its own sake, but using technology to automate the routine and illuminate the strategic, allowing leaders and finance teams to move from reporting to high-impact partnerships. Having lived and worked across the United States, Brazil, and Argentina, and fluent in 4 languages, Carla brings in a truly global perspective on leadership, simplicity, AI, and building diverse, high-performing teams. In this conversation, we explore how leaders reduce complexity, apply AI with intent, and create clarity in a world that often rewards noise over focus. Carla, welcome to the L.O.F.T.
Thank you so much for having me, Ranil. Very nice to see you.
Likewise, you're looking very nice for a Friday afternoon. How's your week been?
It was amazing, doing a lot of things. And I must say that for this podcast, I have quite a setup here. I have my fireplace. I have to feel very relaxed with Ranil talking about my favorite topic. So I put such a setup here. Relax at the moment.
Very good. The setting's perfect. It's a beautiful day outside as well.
Yep.
I hear you're called as Chief Simplifier. Is that right? You're known for simplicity.
Yeah, that's what they say. I mentioned some time ago jokingly, and he goes, "Oh, I like that title." So I keep using it.
Awesome. So we're going to start by talking a little bit about your leadership journey. If you can tell us, where did your leadership journey start and what is your story?
I started my career a long time ago, more than 25 years ago. I had the chance to be in different countries, and I landed here in the US around 20 years ago. But I can tell you that every pit stop that I had, I think that left me a mark and I learned something from it. But yeah, it was a long journey.
So tell us a little bit about, you worked in many different places, or you worked in Brazil, Argentina, now in the US for very large organizations. So tell us a little bit about that journey that you had.
Yeah, most of them were global organizations, which gave me the opportunity to work in very dynamic environments. And when you're in very dynamic organizations, I can tell you that agility and that mindset of simplifying things gives you a competitive advantage, because in those dynamic environments, not everything is perfect. So I think that's what really shaped me, the opportunity, first of all, of being in different countries, different cultures. People do things differently, and you learn from there. and then the opportunity of working for global companies as well.
So today's topic is about leadership driving simplicity and also using technology and AI. So you've been a big advocate. I've seen you speak in many events now, and we keep running into each other in all these events all the
Yes,
time
and you send me
around
to me.
simplicity. I feel like I know you pretty well and your story around simplicity. So tell us a little bit about how this journey started around talking about simplicity.
Yeah, to be honest, I started to speak more about that just in recent years because if I think about when I started my career, simplicity meant something totally different. Um, Simplicity was more on the operational side, thinking how I can shorten the month end close or how can I produce a shorter report. And today I can tell you that concept changed. Today for me is more this clarity of intent, how you can set up clear priorities to your teams and how you can remove all the noise that is what really creates the friction. So it was an evolution. It didn't come overnight. I didn't start my career thinking, oh, yes, it's a clarity of intent. Took some time, some trials and errors, but I've seen firsthand the benefit of this concept of simplicity that I'm trying to share with other leaders, especially today in a moment where technologies are growing, AI is a buzzword. I think our simplicity goes first, and we can dig into that more if you wish.
Yeah, that'd be great, actually. If you think about organizations, most organizations have become global these days, especially with post COVID. You see a lot of remote working, remote operations. And I think it has become more complex, right? In that complex environment, you're driving to a simplicity. So help us understand as leaders, how would you approach that?
I would say there are a few practical ways that you could approach it. Took me some time, but in order for me more agile when I joined a company, I came up with three simple questions. First of all, challenge the legacy. I think that's one of the first things that I do. I really take the time to understand why are we doing certain things. And I always ask when there's a new process or something, and I say like, why? And if I get an answer that is more than a sentence or that is very lengthy, probably that's a candidate for me to take a deeper look and see if something can be simplified, eliminate, or automate. But I think that I would start really like having an understanding of what is the goal of what you want to achieve. What is the ultimate goal? Then I would pause for a second and I would think, what are the consequences if I change this? If I eliminate it, if I automate it. And I must say, we do finance, we don't do brain surgery, we don't do rocket science. So I don't think that the end of the world is going to happen if you stop doing that. And it's a little bit what I said before about the trial and error and see what you can accomplish making a change. And yeah, I think there is also the question of creating that environment for your team and allow them also to be able to experiment and let them bring the ideas to you. I would start from a very practical point of view. I don't think that has to be like an overly complex thing to start like introducing simplicity on what you do.
Yeah. So you talk about practical perspective. I don't know whether you know Rand Stefan, who used to be the managing director of BCG. He talks a lot about reducing complexity, right? And you're talking about focusing on simplicity. It's kind of looking at from a different lens,
Yeah.
the same thing. And how do you focus on simplicity? How do you sell that to a team or a leadership group or executive team? Let's focus on simplicity. How would you sell that to a team?
Yeah, that's interesting. By the way, I wrote an article on simplicity, and when I share with someone the article, they told me, "Have you read the book from Elon Musk? Because he refers about the same thing." So it's not me that is coming up. It's not something new. Has been around for some time. It's just a matter of really have the intention to do it. And I can tell you that it's a superpower, and everybody has it. You just need to have the intention and be deliberate in doing it. And going back to your question, I think it's a very important question because this mindset of simplicity is not a one-man show. You have to scale that up. You have to share it with your teams. And I'm not talking that you have to send a memo to them, communicate it what you want to do, and that's it. You really need to create that space, as I said before, for them to experiment. I never received pushback from the teams. Yes, there were team members where I would question why we do it, and they would answer, oh, because we always done it that way. that probably that those employees probably were more reticent to change. But when you show them the effect that is going to have, the positive effect that is going to have on them, they'll embrace it. I never had anyone that said, no, I don't want to simplify. I want to complicate things. I want to do complex things. But what I think that is key is that you show them, and also you ask yourself, what are you going to be doing with that time, free time? Because that is where growth happens. And if you show them that, I think that they're going to embrace it. I never heard anyone say, no, I like complexity. I'm going to keep doing the complex things.
It's funny, people do like complexity, right?
Oh, yeah. Complexity is not because the process is complex, it's because someone created, designed that process. We are the culprits of it.
I was going to ask you, what do you think, what are the biggest sources of unnecessary complexity? Where does it come from? Is it because people think that the role should be more important or the process should be important?
For me, number one is people. We create the complexity. And I'll give you one example. Like, for instance, we are in finance and risk management is super important. And we have processes in place for a reason. But think about in any organization that you've been, there might be someone, I'm pretty sure, that added one layer or one extra step because they think that they're going to make something less risky. It's us that we are creating that complexity. We are the responsible. We are the one managing. So I think that probably I would say people is the real source of the complexities that you see today in the organizations.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned about Elon Musk. We can talk many things about Elon, but I think one of the things that I've heard him say is around the biggest challenge when he was building rockets is around how do you take things out in the process? How do you reduce a process or a system by one thing? That is what you're talking about, right? So there's some good comparisons between you and Elon.
Yeah, I'm far away from Elon. I highly respect him. But yeah, it's this concept of how you can accomplish your job, having the maximum impact with the minimum. And I'm not saying minimum work, I'm saying minimum effort. That's where I think that when you show that to your teams, when you show that to your business partners, they're going to embrace it.
So, what will be the practical steps you go through in a process of simplifying things?
First of all, I would say step back. Take a second to step back and observe. I personally don't take this approach of going like a bull in a China store and try to dismantle what is set up already. Take a step back and really observe what's happening. Like, for instance, one example that I can give you, I remember coming to a new role and seeing my team working endless hours preparing certain reports. There were a set of 5 reports with different KPIs. And I observed, and then I asked them, like, why are we doing it this way? I didn't get the short, simple answer. So I said, okay, this one probably is candidate to simplify. And then I realized that those 5 reports were going to more than 100 people. There was a huge distribution list. And I asked them, like, do you typically get follow-ups, questions? And they said, no. And that was for me the second flag that I said, okay, maybe this report is going to too many people. I ended up compiling everything in one report. I took it on me and I said, let's chop the distribution list. And the funny thing of this experiment that I did is that only one person asked me to be added back to the distribution list. So this is just a simple example, but that goes to tell you that sometimes step back, observe, ask the question why, and then make a proposal. I think that is if you allow them to experiment, they're gonna do it. So I think that practically what I would say is that, and then ask the questions that I mentioned before. I think that's very important as well. What is gonna happen if you stop doing something? Can you automate? Can you eliminate? And just to clarify, for me, the ultimate form of simplicity is eliminating. Automation could be an alternative as well. But yeah, that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, great. We'll come back to AI and technology around simplicity. But what's the human behavior generally when you say, okay, we're going to simplify things, we're going to take things out, scrap all these steps? What's the general reaction you see from your teams?
My teams, if they see the benefit, that means that it's going to take them less time, they embrace it. Sometimes business partners are more like the ones that they ask, oh, why are you stopping this analysis? Or why are we getting like a shorter version? But I think that as long as you give context to people, they would understand. And I'll give you another example, and this one was not long ago. My president asked me to do a simulation, a high-level simulation. That's what we agree. And every iteration that we did with him, something else was added. And I'm sure that you've been in that situation. And in one of the latest iterations, I went to my team because I have the doubt of what would imply. And they told me, oh, this one is going to take us hours to do because it requires a lot of manual work. And I went back to my president and I gave him context. And I said, listen, if we add all this information that you requested, it's going to require X number of hours to my team to dedicate on this. When I think that with the data that we have, we can still take a decision. And he agreed with me. I gave him the context of what it would entail. And I gave him also the option that with information we had, we could still take a decision. So you're going to find people that is looking for the perfect answer. And I don't know if you heard of this analysis paralysis. There's people out there that they want the perfect analysis, the perfect data set to take a decision. And in today's environment, I can tell you that's the worst step. I think, as I said before, agility, it's a competitive advantage this time.
Funny you say that. I interviewed someone, Sofia Rivas Herrera, who's a supply chain leader.
Yeah.
She said the same thing, analysis paralysis, because you overanalyze and you don't make the decisions, right?
Exactly.
But it's tricky, right? Because if you think about our finance community, we love the controls, we love making sure that we're mitigating risk. And quite often that adds on layers of checks and balances and controls and reviews.
Yeah.
How does finance kind of relate to simplicity? Because when I speak to brand and marketing individuals, fundraising people, or sales people, they love simplicity because they want to get things done, right? Our community is a bit challenged in that space.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. I think first of all, you have to set the example and model the behavior. And I go by these thoughts. I always say to my team, 80% clarity today is more valuable than 100% certainty in a month. So whenever
that's a good point.
And when they give me analysis, sometimes I just want to see 80% of the analysis, and with that, I can run with that. And I show them how you can still take decisions with that. Over time, I notice my team becomes more agile because they know that if they are, say, 60%, 70% done with the exercise, they come and show me. And sometimes even with 70%, I go and say, okay, perfect. This gives me the information I need. I run with this. And they love it because that means that the other 20% or 30%, they don't need to spend finalizing and having the perfect answer. So that's why I'm telling you, like, when you show them what is the benefit, they love it.
That's great. We're going to have a short break and we're going to come back and explore a little bit about how digital and AI is helping you with simplicity.
Okay, let's do it.
We are taking a short break at the Loft. If you are enjoying this episode, please go online, like us, follow us, and subscribe at theloft.club. We'll be back shortly. All right, Carla, welcome back to the Loft. We are talking about simplicity, and who else to talk about simplicity than the chief simplifier? So great to have you back on. So we're going to talk a little bit about AI. I think in the modern world, it's impossible to simplify anything without the technology and the capabilities that the likes of AI and the agents bring in. How are you considering technology and AI in the simplification process?
Yeah, it's a huge component of the simplification. But as I said before, for the ultimate form of simplicity is elimination. Because if you have a complex process that you have today, if you add AI, an enabler, or any other tools in that process, you know what you end up having? It's an automated complex output. So I love AI. It's more than a buzzword. I use it on my personal day. We use it at work. But I think that the first step is really to see how you simplify something before implementing AI. And I was chatting with someone and I asked him, he's in finance, and I said, what are you doing with AI? And he goes, yeah, I'm thinking how I can plug in AI. And I said, may I suggest something? Before that, I think you have to find what are you trying to resolve rather than go and say plugging in. And I see that all the time in organizations or people that I talk to, that because AI is out there and it's available for us, we want to plug it in. But sometimes if something is already complex, first of all, I would try to simplify, as I said, or maybe I would ask, why are we having this process? Because maybe it shouldn't exist in the first place. Make sense?
No, it makes sense. I think quite often AI seems to be the shiny object that everyone wants to plug in quickly or get into. I always advise my teams and also the leadership teams around get your data right and then understand the process and the work and the flow, right? If you don't understand the process and the flow and the complexity that creates, bringing in AI is not going to fix all your problems. Because
100.
for me, I think your alignment to simplicity and looking at process and then thinking about AI is the great approach.
Yeah.
Right? Uh, Tell us a few examples of where you have brought in technology to simplify things.
So I'll give you one example, a recent one. I was managing a retailer's operation. I knew that there was a lot of data. Some companies, they have overloads of data and they don't know how to do with that. So when I was in this retailer, we have ton of data. And my first reaction was, I want to really understand the ROI. There was a certain line in the P&L, we were talking about promotions. And I said, I really want to understand the ROI of that. There was so much data that I knew that even if I pulled the smartest analyst from my team, it would kind of months to do the analysis. And then is when I said, okay, maybe I can tap into AI to see if we can do a regression model or something like that that could help us simplify that data and give us like a simple output. That I was looking was really like a traffic light table that shows me these promotions are high in ROI or these ones are low in ROI. And we did that. And my first approach there is I knew that we have all this data. We were sitting on there. It was humanly not possible to analyze that in a very short period of time. And I tap in new technologies. But I must say that when we tap in new technologies, the fact of keeping humans in the loop, it was critical in this example that I gave you that my team, some of them analysts, some of them are more senior, to be part of the whole process, to be able to challenge it. I didn't just let the technology to run the analysis. I have people also verifying like the outputs were correct. It's no joke that humans, we have the critical thinking, we have the judgment, and I think we have to be part of the process. So don't just let AI do the thing and move on. You need that intervention.
Yeah. So a lot of the digital leaders that I've spoken to, they talk a lot about people, process, and then the system.
Mm.
I think you're saying something very similar, right? You
Mhm.
focus on the people side of the human behavior side of things, on simplicity before you bring in the technology,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And how is this impacting the finance community? Because finance community generally has reasonably good data, but then the bigger challenge is again, how much risk do they want to take? How are you approaching that?
Yeah, that's a very fair question because sometimes when you have so many data and you focus on the wrong point, you end up scaling up the wrong things. So I think it's a question of really focusing and setting clear priorities of what you want to achieve, even before getting into all these conversations about new tools, new technologies.
So let's talk a little bit about teams and how your concept of simplicity can apply to really building strong teams that has a culture of simplicity and a behavioral aspects of simplicity. How are you advising teams on that?
I said it before, I think that you have to model behavior. I think for me is key. The moment that I started to play more around with AI, my team started to mirror in that. And so it's the same to not so great managers that create complexity that makes the teams runs like chicken without heads. The teams mirrors that too. So I think it's a question of modeling behavior. Um, and then really scaling up the simplicity mindset as a culture, right, within your team. And I have few suggestions for you that are practical things that I've done. One of them is where I said to create these moments of experimentation with the teams. I did a couple of fun exercise with teams to really help them find the business cases, use cases for the utilization of new tools. The other one that I think is very practical is leaning your younger talent. They are tech savvy, they are curious, they are versatile, they would love to do a project that is outside their routine. And I think that the last one is that my suggestion is really to praise the people that tries to find those shortcuts and not the ones that likes to manage complexity. Because when you start doing that, people is gonna see what happens and they're gonna start mirroring those behaviors.
Yeah. Interesting. I think the Gen Zs and the Alphas are really thinking about how do you spend less time doing work and more time having fun. But I think that is a really strong recipe for simplicity.
Yeah.
Right? If you can do things quicker and faster and spend less time on it,
Oh, yeah.
why not?
That's, I can tell you that.
So, as old people, it takes a little bit of time to get into it.
But they'll get there. I got there. You guys will get there.
Yeah, very good. So let's talk a little bit about with simplicity, there has to have some level of trust and reliance on if you're doing things simplified, you get to the outcomes that you want. How are you balancing that?
Yeah, I think that first of all, I think that when I jump into a new role or new organization, the first thing that I try to do is to build trust. There are different ways how you can build trust with people, but I think that's key. I think that is key when you start showing them how you can achieve certain goal in a more fast way, in a more simplified way. When even my business partners had recognized that they saw my teams more engaged in the process.
How do you enable or adapt to making sure that you build trust with the simplicity?
How you connect building trust with this concept of simplicity.
Yeah.
Whenever I come in into a new job, I always try to focus on this concept of building trust. I think when you start connecting what you can gain with simplicity, people start seeing the results. I say that from my personal point of view. When I started early on seeing the benefit is I like that I can accomplish what I need to do in less time so I can focus on what really matters. And I think people appreciate clarity of intent, clarity of priorities. Even if we think about, for instance, a transformation process, sometimes people don't have all the answers, but at least they need the right direction, right? Like they need to know where they have to go. So I think that you start being more clear on what you try to accomplish, the benefits are going to follow.
Yeah, great. So we talked a little bit about people's behavior. How do you simplify things without technology? So from a leadership perspective, what capabilities do we need to think about for leaders if they're helping to drive simplicity?
I think that in the context that we are now with new technologies, I would say adaptability. I think that's key. Things are gonna keep evolving. Tell you something that make me pause that I heard recently. They told me we're gonna need to retrain ourselves and our teams every 18 months or 24 months because that's how fast AI is gonna be shifting.
Yeah.
And this is today, 2026. So I think it's gonna be key for leaders to be able to adapt to this constant change and pivot. I think that the other thing that is going to be critical in this current environment is judgment and critical thinking, because even though that you're going to give the keys to the transactional work to AI, you're going to need to be there in the process, that human in the loop as a concept. And I think that the other thing that you mentioned at the beginning is this concept of storytelling, which I find critical, especially when you start your career. And I still see team members that they are young. That's a struggle. But storytelling, I think, is going to be key, especially in our function in finance, because you're going to have tools, LLMs, whatever doing the heavy lifting. But you're going to need to explain what those numbers, the outputs are going to mean. So storytelling, I think, is probably the third critical skill set that leaders will need to have.
It's a good segue and a good plug into. I did an episode with a CFO from Australia called Karma Orden. She really thrives on finance storytelling. I think that's her main topic, and she really focuses on how we can influence decisions through storytelling. And then your simplicity one actually also connects with that. When I speak to our teams or when I speak in conferences, I usually don't say more than three things because I think keeping it simple and high level, that helps to kind of absorb, right? If it's more than three things, I think it's difficult to digest.
I tell you a funny story. In one of the presentations I did, the slides on this topic are very simple. White background with black words, just few words in the slide. So The person that was helping with all the audio and visuals in the events called me before I went to stage, and he asked me, hey, I wanted to ask you and show you because I feel there's something wrong with your presentation. And I was thinking, oh, maybe when I transfer it, something got deleted. And he opened it up and I was thinking, yeah, that's my presentation. And he goes, I don't see graphs, I don't see pictures. Did something got lost? I said, no, that's my presentation. Because I think there's a way simpler way to tell the story. And I agree with you. When slides are too polluted, it's like, what is the point?
Yeah, exactly. I remember that presentation when it came up. I saw the black screen
Yeah.
with the white letters, and then everyone's like, what's going on? There's a bit of buzz. And
Yeah.
then you said, this is simplicity.
Yes.
There's nothing in the slide. It's pretty basic.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're coming to the end of the discussion, but I want to ask you a couple of quick things before we wrap up. What fun projects are you working on? Are you working on anything that's going to advance your campaign on simplicity? Is there anything fun that you're doing
I have a couple of engagements where I'm going to keep preaching about simplicity and the benefit of it. So that for me is very fun to be on a stage.
Yeah.
I love to talk to people that is dedicated in AI to see what's going on. I met recently a couple of companies that are doing like very fun stuff, and my wheels are already turning. Okay, how can I bring it to life? How can I apply? Hopefully they are not hearing this podcast so they don't chase me. But
Oh, this is getting aired a lot, so you might get a lot of following. You never know.
But I think that I found it very fun to find platforms like this one or any events where I can continue sharing the benefits of this mindset, which I think is going to be critical in the moment that we are today in the inflection point of all these new technologies.
So Carla, this is really great, and you've been a strong advocate for simplifying things, especially in the finance and the business operations space. And you've well earned your title of the Chief Simplifier. So thank you so much for joining us at the L.O.F.T. It's been a great pleasure. So hopefully we'll see you around in the circuit.
Maybe in the next event. Who knows? Thank you, Ranil. It was lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
Here are the 3 key takeaways from our episode today. First takeaway: simplicity starts with elimination, not automation. Before reaching for AI or any technology, the first step is to challenge why a process exists at all. If you can't get a short, clear answer for why something is done, it's a candidate for simplification or removal entirely. Our second takeaway: leaders must model the behavior they want to scale. A culture of simplicity doesn't come through a memo. When leaders demonstrate that 80% of clarity today is much more valuable than 100% certainty in a month's time, teams begin to mirror that mindset, become more agile and less prone to analysis paralysis. Our third and final takeaway: human judgment remains essential even as AI takes over transactional work. As AI handles more of the heavy lifting, the skills that will differentiate leaders are adaptability, critical thinking, and storytelling, and the ability to interpret and communicate what data and AI outputs actually mean for the business. Hope you enjoyed today's episode of The L.O.F.T. Thanks for joining us on The L.O.F.T. If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, please go online, like us, follow us, and subscribe at theloft.club or any channels that you get your podcasts from. Until next time, lead with clarity, operate with purpose, and transform with insight. I'm your host, Ranil De Silva. Until we see you again, bye for now.